Dark matter is a hypothetical substance that makes up approximately 85% of the matter in our current universe, but for some reason we cannot confirm its existence, since it does not interact with the electromagnetic force. This in turn means it does not absorb, reflect, or emit light, making it extremely hard to spot or even prove its existence. And the only reason us as a species believe in its existence is the unexplained nature of the forces of gravity. So, in this hypothetical of what if Naruto had dark matter or dark matter release, we will be stepping into something closer to a gravitational pull with some fictional spins on the concept of dark matter, which would more closely link it to antimatter. So if you do see some crosses in that little gray section between the two, that is the reason, just to spice the what if up a little bit more. But I've been blabbering on long enough with the explanation, so let's get into this. As the hawk is received and its message is translated from its prior encryption, it is revealed that both the Sen and Kazekage had been attacked, and as most of us know, the current standing Kazekage is Gaara. Obviously, this would be some new news to Naruto and some other key individuals, but Naruto, along with the newly named Team Kakashi, consisting of Kakashi himself, Sakura, and obviously Naruto, would set out for their so-called mission, I could say, to go and save Gaara, or at least help the Sand in any way possible. There is one quick change I would make, and this is the fact that their travel might go somewhat faster, to the point where I'm willing to say we can cut off about 25 to 50% of the time they originally took. Meaning, Sakura might have a easier time healing Kankuro, and their search for Gaara might go a lot hastier. But obviously I need to explain how this happens. Of course, Naruto would use his gravitational type abilities to place pointers, or what I like to call points, on individuals, which would then control and distribute the gravity that's being forced down on their body through the use of dark matter. Obviously, by lightening the amount, they are obviously able to have less force pushing down on them, meaning whilst being chakra enhanced, they will move at extreme speeds. So, whilst we might still have a similar scene in canon where Kakashi is scolding Naruto for trying to get there almost immediately, this time I do think Kakashi would tell Naruto to take caution, but since the ample speed goes up, they would rather try and keep up with Naruto. This is where we are in that vague spot between 25 and 50%. Thus, we would lead into Chio still attacking Kakashi like normal, thinking that he is his father, which would lead to an explanation, with Sakura preparing the herbs, or at least trying to prepare the herbs, being short of these special type of medicinal flower, I believe, that they barely have in growth or in season. I don't really know how to explain it, but as per usual, they would get the herb, maybe quicker, maybe not, and still end up healing Kankuro. That would once again lead to the parchment of Sasori's cloak, I believe, as thus would leave us to see Kakashi summon his dogs, which would then help us track down the Akatsuki. That was a pretty rushed segment, but now we can get into a calmer one. As the pup or Paku would track down the Akatsuki, we would hear that Team Guy are en route. And hearing that Naruto and them had already arrived within the sand, Guy and Lee would be all too eager to catch up to their rivals, or so-called rivals, as they would force Tenten and Neji to suffer, dragging along with them. I still do not think that Guy and Lee and even Team Guy would catch up to Naruto's team fast enough, as I think they would be encountered with Itachi's clone premeditated. Thus, meaning they might know it's a clone much easier, or even be able to dispatch of it easier, with the small threat of Kisame's clone popping up being a possibility. And in this specific case, it will be a possibility, and not only that, a guarantee, as they now stand face with whom they believe to be Kisame Hoshigaki and Itachi Uchiha. Our seemingly bout would not immediately begin, as we would start off with a toss of words, with both sides having something to say to the other, which would lead us to some similar interaction to canon, with Itachi attempting to put everyone under a genjutsu, but immediately this would basically trigger an interesting reaction from Naruto. Naruto had spent a lot of time trying to control the Nine Tails because of its early burst out in the seal, and as time progressed, if he let go of his emotions or got angry, the Nine Tails energy would easily leak. And moments upon Itachi attempting to throw a genjutsu, Naruto would have leaked at least a cloak, thus would be more or less unaffected by the genjutsu, since it is not of Mangekyo level. It was only a base Sharingan genjutsu, with Naruto gaining the opportunity to increase the gravity around Kisame and Itachi whilst lightening it around himself. He would be able to rush the Itachi clone and hit it successfully, or what seems to be successfully, with a Rasengan, or some sort of unstable Rasengan. But as always, Kisame and his trusty blade Samehada would intercept this. This is where things start getting odd and kind of out of proportion for how it would usually go. We all know that Naruto's chakra is very unstable and corrupt at this point, and unlike how Samehada usually likes both normal chakra and tailed beast chakra, this form of unstable chakra actually hurts Samehada. It would spike up and throw itself out of Kisame's hand as it would crawl out of reach. Obviously, this would stun both the clone of Kisame and the real Kisame controlling him, as even Itachi would be surprised. This leaves an opening for Sakura and Kakashi to break out of their respective genjutsu and possibly try to attack either Kisame, who is now no longer armed, and Itachi, who would probably predict all of this. Thus, I would think there would be a bout between the full Team 7 and the group between Itachi and Kisame. So, thus we would begin a fight between them, with me thinking most likely that Naruto would attempt to take on Itachi because of his connection to Sasuke, while he would thus ask Kakashi and Sakura to keep up with Kisame. I do think personally that Kakashi would have at least some trouble with Kisame, as I think Kisame and Itachi would have at least trained with each other on occasion, meaning Kisame should know the bare basics of avoiding the Sharingan's prediction. Thus, I think this is a perfect matchup, meaning Naruto gets to show off a lot of what he got, already having leaked the one tail, and Kakashi might needing to start his process of awakening the Mangekyo early. And that's exactly what would happen. Sakura would have to take up a stalling position against Kisame, as Kakashi would try to awaken his eye. He would land the occasional taijutsu kick or so, as he himself would also have two hands crossed over his eye, channeling as much chakra into it as possible. Itachi is curious on what he's doing, but when Kisame asks, Itachi does not reply. Obviously, he is wondering why his opponent or his friend is neglecting him, as he is curious, but there is always the chance of Itachi not knowing. In hindsight, Itachi does know what is going on, and Kakashi starting to awaken his hidden Mangekyo, and is low-key proud of his former comrade, as he does want him to succeed. On the other hand, we see Kisame easily avoiding a lot of Sakura's attacks, but being somewhat frustrated that he cannot currently find the clone version of Samehada, as it could really help in this fight. On the other hand, he knows if he gets hit by a single one of Sakura's attacks, this could be over with. Then we move on, or at least to the side to see what's happening between Naruto and Itachi. And this is where I think things will get really interesting. The more angry Naruto gets, the more tails would leak. And in my estimation, I would say at most 3 tails, but for now we are sticking to 1, as Naruto would still be fully in control and logical, knowing that the tail is there. He would use it to his advantage to increase the gravitational field around Itachi a lot more than is normally possible, putting Itachi in a scenario where he has to play the dodge game. Obviously, he could just awaken his Sharingan and kill Naruto, which Kisame would probably point out, but Itachi would afterwards, when this is all over, explain that he doesn't want to, thus it might speed up his death and he might never get to talk to his brother again. Obviously, Kisame knows this is something very important to Itachi, so he might not even push on it. So, Naruto's progression on fighting Itachi, or at least the stalling of Itachi, whilst being able to talk to him and constantly breaking out of Itachi's genjutsu without trying, would leave Kisame with the attempt to attack Naruto. This is where I think the first Kamui of our little what-if scenario here would come in, with Kakashi trying to Kamui away Kisame, but instead does one of Kisame's jutsu, not having full accuracy on this technique yet. Obviously now this leaves a proud Itachi with a curious Kisame, as he does not know what just happened. But as his own eyes hone on Kakashi's, he can make out the shape of not so much a Sharingan, but a Mangekyo. This is when Kisame would get hit in the side of the face with what is seemingly Samehada, as blood would spurt from where the sword was. But this isn't Kisame's blood. This is the person that was holding Samehada's blood. And it's a man completely dressed in green with a bulb cut and thick eyebrows? Kisame would turn his head and say, "Green Beast," as Guy would reply, "I am Mike Guy of the Hidden Leaf. Have I met you before?" As Kisame would facepalm as always, being yet another interaction with Guy. Guy would finally drop Samehada as he would go into a fighting stance. This would leave a able Kakashi, Guy, Lee, who would arrive shortly after Guy, and possibly even Neji and Tenten to back up Naruto. In this specific case, I do think Lee, Neji, and Naruto would probably be the best match for Itachi, as I think at this point Guy would have explained to Lee while fighting against a Sharingan user to pay attention to their feet. And on top of that, Neji not being in too much danger since using the Byakugan to look at it from a different view. So this taijutsu kind of trio would be a perfect match for the Itachi clone, most likely eventually gaining the upper hand and dispersing it before I think Kisame is dispersed, as he would now have his Samehada back. It is unclear if Samehada would work against a distanced Kamui, but I truly do not think it would, as that is just a unexplainable technique, and how Mangekyo techniques usually work would at least say that would not occur. So this leaves us with the inevitable 7v1 to the Kisame clone, which I think would once again go in the 7 direction. So this would leave our team on a head start to the Akatsuki base. Obviously, we could make the assumption that they could get there at the same time, thus to getting lost, but I do think they will make it in ample time, with Kakashi also having pre-prepared his Kamui, maybe being a bit tired, but due to Naruto's gravitational lightning, he will have a much easier trip. And if it really gets bad, Guy might just carry him. So as we arrive to the field of at least the doorway to the Akatsuki hideout, I think in this case Naruto would be able to analyze the seal, as he had more time to do other things with Jiraiya. I think seals would have been one of them, seeing as his own seal was an important matter that they had currently and continuously discussed. So we now see Naruto analyzing the seal and explaining it to Team Guy and his own team, as they would spread out to thus destroy the seal.
Get on to the same set of events, Team Guy would still go on to remove the tags and face their clones. But come back to that later, Team 7 themselves would finally be able to get in, as Sakura would still destroy the rock, or maybe Naruto. Really, anyone can do it, but moving on, Naruto wastes no time after seeing Gaara, who would be alive since they did arrive about 3 hours early, as he put up a gravity field inside of the cave, making Sasori Data afloat, kind of catching them off guard. But Naruto would use this opportunity to take Gaara and get out of there. Yeah, Sakura would also take this chance, hopping in and going for a straight punch to Sasori, which would destroy his outer shell, and the real one of him would be just fine. But eventually the anti-gravity thing wears off, and Deidara ends up making a Kleber and would give chase to Naruto, with Kakashi following suit, as Sakura and Chio would be left to deal with Sasori as in canon. As Suri and Chio would probably have a little, talk, some brief dialogue exchanges, not much different from in canon. But the talk eventually ends as Sasori bring out the third Kazekage puppet instead of, in the beginning, Sakura and Chio dodging poison needles. It'd be them dodging poison sand until they could get an opening to destroy the puppet. This leads to about the same maneuvers as in canon, with Sakura knocking away some of the iron sand, Chio, bringing her back using her puppeteer skills, and basically them doing the same teamwork they did as in canon, as Sakura still off guards the third Kazekage puppet and destroys it with a punch. From here, Sasori still brings out all his different scrolls, the first one being fire, which they hide behind rocks from, in water, which would destroy the rocks. This eventually leads to Sasori using his final scroll and bringing out the 100 puppet jutsu. Chio ends up bringing out her different puppets, her 10 different puppets, and the 12 eventually start bashing their way through Sasori's, 100 puppets. And as in canon, Sakura ends up taking out the main body the same way she did as in canon. Sasori, since his core wasn't destroyed, still switches to another body and, stabs Sakura in the back. And Chio still takes Sasori out using the puppets of his mother and father. She still heals Sakura. Sasori still gives up the information about, Orochimaru, that key info, and eventually Sasori dies. Anyways, eventually back to Team Guy fighting their clones, and they'd eventually finish that about the same way as in canon. And unfortunately, that will be all for today. Be sure to check out the next video. I also do hope you enjoyed this one though. And if you would consider checking out my channel, Saiyan Sage, there will be a card up there and a link down in the description. If you guys want to help support the Meister Clan community, consider joining the Discord, his Discord. And with that, peace.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
Subscribe for more. Yada yada does it.